The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining our global webinar day on Unified Cloud Application Performance Monitoring. We will start in about 1 minute just to give everybody a chance to log in and join our session in time. Welcome again everybody. Thank you for joining our global webinar day on Unified Cloud Application Performance Monitoring today. My name is Dietmar Kneidl with Infosim, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Our presenter is John Olson, VP Technical Services Americas, and he will guide you through the presentation. Before I hand over to John, I just wanted today's audience to know that all of you are automatically muted to keep down the background noise. So in order for us to answer your questions, you will have to type them in the window at the bottom of the meeting screen. John will be answering all questions right after the presentation in our Q&A session. Also, please note that this event is being recorded and all registrants will be notified via email tomorrow on how to access the recording. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our presenter, John Olson. John?
Thank you, Dietmar, and thank you everyone for attending the webinar today. As Dietmar mentioned, I'm the VP of Technical Services for the Americas, but I am proud to be the presenter for this series for the EMEA region. It should take about 30 minutes this morning, 45 minutes with Q&A, so we'll try and get you some good information and get you back to work. For those of you who are not familiar with Infosim, have not worked with us in the past, a real quick background on our company. We've been around for over 10 years. We are privately owned with our headquarters in Germany, but offices in the USA, of course, where I work, as well as Singapore and in the UK. Our customer base comprises hundreds of enterprise and telco scale customers. Those are service providers as well. Could be government entities, but generally larger enterprises and larger telco customers. And we really focus on service assurance for those customers. And today, of course, we're talking specifically about cloud application performance management or service assurance within the cloud app world. In general, we have a number of very unique capabilities and strengths of our solution, but one of them for sure is our comprehensive solution, really a unified platform for doing what we consider to be the three major pillars of network management or service assurance, which are configuration, performance, and fault management in a unified platform, a single application. These are not modules. These are not multiple development efforts. This is not multiple companies that have been cobbled together through acquisition. This has been developed by the same team from the ground up from day one. We have an ultra-scalable architecture, which is why we are able to do very well in that large enterprise telco carrier space. We have an end-to-end awareness, and I think you'll get a flavor for that as we go through this presentation today, that delivers a tremendous amount of automation and capabilities from really end-to-end within all network management spheres, not just the cloud app that we're talking about today, but just in general. And because of that automation and because of that unification, we deliver massive benefits from automation and return on investment in months, not years, as is typical. So a quick view as we get into the meat of the presentation now on cloud applications and services, and just some statistics that we have found out there that really, I think, underscore the penetration of delivery of cloud apps. Gartner suggests that by 2016, over 50% of global 1,000 companies will have stored customer-sensitive data in the public cloud. I think that's really interesting. So they're not just using a cloud app, but actually willing to store customer-sensitive data in a public cloud. I think the benefits of using a public cloud and the technology growth has really spurred that on, and I found that incredibly interesting because these are companies that typically will do anything to keep customer data from moving off site, but there's just so many benefits to moving to the cloud. As of 2012, according to IDC, 80% of new enterprise apps, new apps being deployed in enterprises, are being deployed on a cloud platform, whether that's a public cloud, a private cloud, or a hybrid cloud. That's how those applications are being deployed today. Very, very few new apps are coming on board as a sort of a single server or bare metal application as it used to be in the past. And 7 out of 10 companies today are in some sort of trial or proof of concept regarding a cloud service, or actively transitioning something that they have, what I'll call on-prem, to something in a cloud infrastructure. So there's really no doubt that this is the way that companies have been moving for a while and are continuing to move in the future, and therefore from an IT management perspective, where we come in, you really have to have a solution, as we do, that takes into account these changes in the way the world works. From the people that we talk to, our customers, who are the IT managers or service providers, they need to really be at the forefront of managing these cloud apps. Sometimes our customers are the ones deploying these cloud apps for their customers, and they need to provide that information to their customers. So no matter which end you're coming from, this is obviously an important topic and something that needs to be explored. There are many challenges that a company would face, or a service provider would face, when trying to monitor these cloud apps. Just a few of them are listed here, but I think these are sort of the top ones. You know, these are what happens when you move from a traditional server-based application rollout to a cloud app rollout, whether it's hybrid or public or even private. You lose some control. You cannot just walk up to the server that is running the application anymore. It just doesn't work that way. And that loss of control means a loss of monitoring and a loss of ability to easily pinpoint where a problem may be. In some cases where the cloud app vendor, if you're using a third party that's running the cloud app, let's say it's Salesforce.com or something fully in the cloud, they don't provide a lot of performance data, or in many cases any performance data. So you can't get it from them. There has to be another way to try and figure out what's going on. You really have that lack of visibility and alerting when there's even fault and outages. So let alone performance information, you know, just even what's available, just availability information becomes obfuscated many times from the vendor. And therefore, your ability to identify and allocate where a fault may exist, whether it's internal to you, whether it's on your internet provider, whether it's in your data center, your cloud vendor, the application itself. Now it's much more complex than it used to be to try and identify where the fault lies. And of course, identifying and being able to hopefully remediate where the fault lies is the key to what we're trying to do here. And then lastly, along with cloud deployment, the other major thing that is happening globally, of course, is mobile and remote usage of many of these applications. So that adds another layer of complexity, because the users themselves aren't even standing still anymore as you were. They're moving around. They're using different platforms, phones, tablets, whatever it may be. They're in airports, they're in hotels, but yet they still sort of tend to demand, as users do, the same level of experience when trying to get to an application that they would demand if they were sitting in their office at their desk. And so again, from an IT manager perspective, this becomes really challenging to try and identify where the problem may lie as those users move around and access the application from a variety of platforms. So there's a lot of challenges, and it's not easy, but there are a few ways that you can get out this information. And it begins with, and at least from our presentation perspective, where we're going to begin is looking at WAN access to the cloud environment, right? So you need to take a step-by-step approach, and we're gonna go through each of those steps in each of those areas to try and identify how you can gather the key information that you need. We're beginning with WAN because if it's a cloud-based application, whether it's running in someone else's data center or a fully cloud-provided application that you have no control of, you're accessing it and your users are accessing it through some sort of WAN technology. And therefore, and WAN, of course, presents its own challenges. Typically, your WAN has a smaller bandwidth capability than your LAN does, almost always. There may be multiple points of contact. Sometimes it's under your control. Many times it's not under your control at all. It's just being provided to you by the service provider. And so you need to be able to try and get a handle to some degree on what's happening on those WAN devices, on those WAN elements, particularly the interfaces that are passing the traffic and whether or not they have the correct quality of service enabled. If this application is being tagged with some sort of expedited or assured queue quality of service, then that needs to be maintained as far as you possibly can throughout the process. And so identifying those configurations, how the application is running, is incredibly important. And there's a variety of techniques to do that, which we'll talk about sort of towards the end here. But really getting a handle on what's happening in the WAN is probably the first step, because that is how this information is going to get to the cloud application host one way or the other. Of course, the second piece is the LAN infrastructure itself. This is more traditional monitoring. This is where the traffic is being passed that is under your control. It doesn't mean that it can't be a problem, as if there's still something that goes wrong on the internal LAN, and whether that LAN is your corporate LAN or maybe a small office or remote office LAN, or even a home user LAN, so to speak, if there is, an access point, a small DSL router or broadband device at the premises. Those still, it would be nice if you could have some performance analytics and of course availability analytics as to what's happening at those areas, right? So the user still has to connect into a switch somewhere and still has to begin sending those packets in and out before it gets to the WAN. And you still need to be able to monitor those because if the problem arises in those systems, it doesn't matter that the data center's up, it doesn't matter that the cloud application wherever it resides is running okay. If they can't get to it, then it doesn't matter. So you build onto the WAN the traditional LAN connectivity, and you need to be able to do that in the same view. So keep in mind that everything I'm talking about from a StableNet perspective is happening within the same application. This is not a different app that's looking at the WAN from the one that's looking at the LAN. This is all happening within StableNet. The third piece is, of course, the physical and virtual hosting platforms themselves, so where the applications are being hosted. Again, that can be on a privately owned cloud-based system. That could be on a public system. That could be on a shared hybrid sort of data center. It could be completely in the cloud. It could be in Amazon. It could be in IBM's cloud or whoever you're using. But there is some platform that is obviously hosting this application or these applications. It's probably running on a VM type environment with automated provisioning tools. In some case, there's management of those systems. In many cases, there's not. and trying to get an understanding or a handle, particularly on threshold, event, and alarm management around those systems and those services. Are they available? Can I get to them? Can I get to the associated services that are responsible for maintaining the application? If the virtual environment is under my control at all, can I then understand how it's put together? What are the platforms being used? What are the VMs that are running on that platform, the compute and data resources that are being allocated to those VMs, and then the performance around each of those. So the CPU, the memory, the storage resources being allocated to each of those VMs running the applications, and can I monitor the performance and availability of each of those on an individual basis as well as a whole across the entire architecture. StableNet has capabilities specifically within VMware and on other virtual platforms that allow us to get that information, be able to visualize it within StableNet, be able to immediately start measuring the performance stats, monitoring those performance and availability statistics to give you a handle on what's happening within sort of the server infrastructure as it is today. And again, do that on top of the previous things that we've just described on the LAN side and on the WAN side. And now, of course, you're getting down into the actual application itself. I need to identify how that application is running, performance. Is it available, of course? Can my users get to it? If they can get to it, are they receiving the quality of experience, we'll call it, on that application that they expect? Does it take too long to open something? Am I waiting? Am I sitting there waiting for a screen to repaint, or is the application, running as it should? If it's a web-based app, is it working within the browsers that I expect it to work within? Are there problems getting that up and running? And of course, there are multiple different kinds of statistics now that we should be looking at to identify that. It's more of a transaction-based view, and we have the ability to do and to use things like TCP connect times on a port, SQL queries and responses, synthetic transactions, and identify how fast those things are running and how well they are providing the SLA values that you would expect. We have the ability, especially in many cases, we're seeing that the cloud application is a VoIP or video application. That is one of the major technologies that has been adopted by the cloud very readily, especially here in the Americas. And I believe I'm speaking the same for what's happening in Europe. With VoIP and video, you have a whole host of different things that you need to look at, jitter and delay and things like that, and being able to monitor those when that application, the VoIP or video call manager, if you will, is being hosted off-prem. And StableNet has some ways of doing those types of measurements and getting that information back into the overall platform. We can run predefined scripts that can interact with web applications and perform a suite of metrics and tests that are collected and analyzed for specific performance-related issues of the application itself. So we've got the app, we've got the servers or server environment, the virtual environment running the apps, we've got the LAN and WAN infrastructure, and just sort of building that or putting the pieces of the puzzle together to really identify where the possible problem may be. And at the end of the day, what you're looking for, what your customers are interested in or your users are interested in, is a service experience, right? They want this application should be running in a manner that provides me a good user experience. That's when I'm not going to pick up the phone and call my help desk or my service desk. That's when I'm not going to complain to people, is if I feel like the service is running well. So what StableNet would do is build an overall service experience level, if you will, represented by the graphic on the screen here, right? And that includes all of the different pieces that I've talked about so far. They can be rolled up, if you will, into a single view, a service view. We will use the term weather map in our product, and if, for those of you who have not used StableNet before, that's a particular area of the product where you can bring in multiple kinds of performance and fault analytic and data and create an overall service view for an application, let's say. So again, it could be a big one here in the US, and I think in Europe, Salesforce.com. You could roll that up into a single view. It could take into account all of the various things that I've described. How is my LAN running? How are my WAN connections running? Can I get to DNS servers? Can I get to Salesforce.com and can I log in? Can I perform transactions? And how is all of that running? And it all builds up into a single, or can build up into a single service experience score, if you will, or certainly a view. And it can alarm when there are problems. And when there are problems, the alarms can be traced using our root cause analysis down to where the problem is. Therefore, there can be some action being taken by the appropriate teams. Maybe that action is to contact the hosting provider or the application provider, because you can identify that it's happening on their side and not your side. Maybe it is on your side and you can begin to fix that. So really understanding and being able to deploy some cloud app performance monitoring will ultimately drive down your mean time to repair and provide you the comfort of knowing that the customers, the end users, are experiencing the quality of app performance that they expect. So when we look at the various techniques that StableNet has to do all of these different things, are somewhat summarized on this slide. We begin with inventory management. So this is doing a discovery, understanding what you have. This is primarily related to the LAN and WAN environment, as we've been discussed, but also the server environment, the VM environment, if you have access to it as well. We can use the APIs provided by VMware to input this information into StableNet, and really, therefore, be able to begin tracking how things are running. We automatically create a topology view so you can see how the traffic is flowing, at least within, or how the devices are connected, at least the ones that are under your control. We have the ability to do configuration management and policy management. Policy management is really important when we're talking about the particular quality of service policies that might be enabled that are important for an application. Again, you see this quite often with VoIP and video, where of course they might be running on their own VLAN. They have their own dedicated bandwidth through interfaces, especially WAN interfaces, and that policy needs to be enforced across the entire estate. Otherwise, even one place where that is not enforced sort of can ruin the entire policy. Performance management, obviously key to everything that we've talked about, doing bandwidth measurements, looking at QoS, running synthetic transactions, pulling in data via things like NetFlow, IPSLA, or similar technologies. We have our own ability in our technology to do multimedia measurements, meaning similar to an IPSLA measurement, but we can go even deeper. Down to essentially down to almost a desktop type test using very inexpensive hardware, and we can certainly talk more about what we can do on that side. It's a very exciting area for us right now. But ultimately, we can get those performance metrics from a variety of techniques, a variety of standards and platforms, and build that back into the overall view as to what's happening. And of course, fault management with root cause analysis. This is a major a piece of what StableNet can do. You're monitoring all these things. You're looking at all this information. When something goes wrong, you want to be able to quickly correlate what's happening and get down to the root cause and understand, okay, that's the problem. You don't want 50 alarms going off. You don't want all kinds of lights blinking at you. You want to be able to say, you want to see one alert that shows you what the root cause is. It's great that we can also show you who's affected, what servers, what services, what users, potentially what business groups are being affected by this problem. But at the end of the day, the problem is here. This is the root cause, and this is what you need to go down and try and get fixed. And lastly, what we call service visualization. I've talked about this a little bit. That's building that cloud service environment in a weather map, showing all of the component parts, and really delving down into, or being able to give you a single view, unified pane of glass view, which we can do because we, again, we have no silos of data. We can include NetFlow data and IPSLA SLA data and SNMP data and anything else that I've described into a single view, because we are a unified platform. We are not bolted together pieces of software, or just as we see constantly as I talk to customers, they have 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 applications trying to do the job of one. They have one NetFlow application. They have a different application for IPSLA. They have a different application that's specific to a vendor that they're using. There's no problem with any of that within StableNet. We're vendor agnostic. We support them all, and we can get all of those different kinds of performance and fault data into one unified view. So to kind of conclude, there are many aspects to managing a cloud hosting environment. We've talked about the individual elements that make up the delivery of a cloud-based service or cloud-based application. You've got physical platforms like your switching and routing and firewall environment. You've got virtualized platforms in the servers. You've got hosted systems that may not be under your control at all. They're totally outside of your organization. All of that needs to be brought together. So the strategy going forward from an IT service perspective, an IT management perspective, is to deploy a unified management solution. You can't necessarily unify the different systems themselves and where they're running, but you should be able to unify your management solution. You shouldn't have to go to 5 or 6 different applications to get the information and then try and put it all together by yourself to correlate where things are happening and truly visualize the entire end-to-end application environment. The least we can do is provide a single platform for you that eliminates that, even if we can't eliminate the problems from happening in the first place. So with that, I think we're just about on time. Here, I want to make a note for you that we have a lot of information related to this that you can get to. As Dietmar mentioned, this webinar is being recorded. It will be available for you to view in the future. But we have other resources available as well, most of them directly from our website, so please hit that. We have a technology brief, as we call it, specifically on this application that has recently been released. It goes into even more depth than I could do today. And so I highly recommend taking a look at that. Certainly you can contact your Infosim sales representative or tech representative, and they can get on a demo with you. They can show you what I've been describing to you, and we're always more than happy to make evaluation copies of the platform available to you to test out on your own through proof of concept. So we're happy to support you any way that we can. With that, Dietmar, I'll turn it back over to you to see if there are any questions.
All right. Well, thanks, John, for your presentation. We haven't received any questions so far, at least none during your presentation, so I guess it was pretty good. Let's just keep the session open for a minute or two, so if anybody is interested in coming up with a specific question, feel free to put those into the question field inside your web application, and we'll just I guess give it a minute. Well, all right. No questions so far. So, okay, here's the first one. Just a second. Okay, questions. If you could describe a list of applications that Infosim or /StableNet supports out of the box, John?
Yeah, that's a bit of a tricky question for us. We do have certain applications that we support directly when the platform is installed. Things like well, just in general, VoIP and video, things like Exchange or other email applications, web-based applications in general. We support just availability and performance monitoring of hitting the website, things like that. But really, what's important to note is that StableNet as a platform is designed to really get to know your use case, your application, to understand what are the particular performance and fault metrics that that app relies on, and then being able to, without a lot of coding or without changing much, but just developing some simple templates and scripts, can really hone in on exactly what needs to be done for that application. No two applications are alike. No two ways that an application are being accessed from an end user are alike. And so I don't think, and we don't think that just saying, oh, we support XYZ out of the box, here it is, and it's good, really works for anyone. Because you probably are running it slightly differently than the next person is. So we have the technology built and the platform built to be able to very rapidly support new applications or different applications specific for the end user environment quickly. We certainly do have some out-of-the-box ones. I don't have a list that I can rattle off. We have a list, but I'm not going to just rattle it off here. But I would invite you to think about it more as a platform that can be easily extended for your environment and the unique challenges of your environment through our interface.
All right, I guess that pretty much answered the question. Well, so far we have not received any other questions. I guess for the time being there are no other questions, at least not from our attendees. So wanted to thank everyone for joining our session today, and as John has mentioned earlier, a recording of this event will be made available to all of you tomorrow via email. And again, quoting John, if you have any other question, if you feel the need to request a demo license of the StableNet platform, just feel free to contact either John, myself, or any other member of the sales and support staff with Infosim. Well, thanks again for joining us today, and we'll let you go back to your work. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.